Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I'm Rutty4, this is Greyjello91.
Hello.
This is Evan95.
I am here, and because Antoine is not, I solemnly swear I am up to no good.
And this is Jensarai1.
Potter for president.
So yeah, Matt, bring some of the summation of this extremely complex and intricate chapter with varying elements to it.
Right, yeah. So this is chapter 11 entitled Quidditch, and that's what it's about. We finally get to play Quidditch. So let's just get into that, shall we?
Yes. Opening up before the Quidditch match, because we still got a little bit of lead in
themes,
for it.
man.
We open up with the nice season change, another one of the little transitional jumps, which I like to do with it, again, as we mentioned last time, to do with the term times. Nice little bit of description as well. I particularly like the lake-like chilled steel, which was really cool. Like nice little lead-in. She has a good way of summating simple concepts and kind of bringing the background of the Hogwarts school to life. Similar to the way the films kind of do that panning shot of various different elements of the grounds with the different seasonal jumps. I think they kind of brought that simplicity to life very well on screen.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I kind of like about it is just how accurately it actually replicates the experience you have at school. Because when you're in a school, things kind of turn into a bit of a daily grind, and you don't really notice the passage of time. And then one day you get up, and it's like, holy shit, it's November and it's snowing. When did that happen?
Yeah.
Well, Matt and I don't experience that, considering where we
live. No, we live in California. We don't have seasons in California.
I have never had a snow day, and I doubt Matt has either.
Neither have I, actually.
It's more like I've been made to go in the middle of like just this drudgery of like snow making everything ugly and gross and dangerous, but not pretty and not packed to the point where you don't have to go to school.
Right.
I've never had a snow day ever because in Canada, well...
You deal with it.
That's every day.
Deal with it.
You don't close school for trifles like the weather in Canada.
Yeah, as opposed to the UK where you have like the tiniest bit of snow on the ground and the entire country grounds to a halt.
Everyone forgets how to drive.
I've had many a snow day in my life. But yeah, just the nice...
Do you have to make them up? Like come summer?
Nope.
Do you have to make
you
them
just
up?
Lose a day. It's a wonderful celebration for the students of primary and secondary schools.
You do something right over there. You do something right over there. Because even if we got snow days, we just have to make them up during the summer anyway. So what's the point?
God, no. That's horrible. It's supposed to be magical, not drudgery. Anyway, but yeah, we focus back into the Hogwarts school, and I like we have one of my favorite kind of mental visuals of the entire series for me, with the trio kind of now fully formed with Hermione properly joined them, with their backs to some bluebell flames in a jam jar. I don't know why, but I've always enjoyed that kind of visual of them just standing out in the courtyard and warming themselves up. And yeah, I don't know. What did you think of that? Because I don't know why that very specific moment is something that catches to me, because it's a very brief and relatively insignificant one, but I just love it.
Well, there is like really a sense of like friendship and like comfort, with it. It's just friends being friends, hanging out, out by the fire. I mean, and that's nice. So it's simple but effective. It's just kind of a shame we never saw something like that in the films. That scene brought to life would have been interesting. And not that difficult to make. So it's weird that they didn't do it.
The one thing I find very interesting reading the description of this in the book, though, is that it's stated that it's all three of them standing with their backs to the fire, which means that they're basically in a circle, backs together, because hiding the fire, they can't make it obvious by facing it. But it strikes me as very interesting because it's like they're already settling into a natural defensive posture, all eyes out.
Yeah, they definitely got their wits about them with the likes of Snape wandering around, which is probably a good idea because immediately following that, he turns up, as he always does, limping post-Halloween, because obviously he's encountered Fluffy by this point. Harry finds that out shortly after this when he goes to retrieve his Quidditch Through the Ages book. But not really worth mentioning all of that in great detail. Yeah, not worth mentioning in great detail. But the reason I wanted to talk about this scene specifically is because it's another good example of what Antoine mentioned in the last chapter, or previous one, I can't remember which, how Rowling has a good way of giving kind of interesting ties throughout the chapters in almost an episodic format. Like previously it was the Wingardium Leviosa charm, and here it's the Quidditch Through the Ages book. Each kind of beat in this chapter sequentially is attached to Quidditch Through the Ages. The chapter opens with Harry talking about it as like it's an interesting read that Hermione lent me to borrow, and then it comes, obviously Snape takes it, he goes to retrieve it from the staff room, and then it comes up as being the entire chapter about Quidditch. So it's that kind of is that kind of focus point for the chapter in this one.
And I would actually like to one thing I would like to discuss is the change, because this is actually one of the things that gets omitted from the movie. In the movie, what happens, it's Harry notices that Snape's limping right before the Quidditch match when Snape, in a very out-of-character moment, steps up to him and wishes him luck in the coming match. And, well, it's a truncation, but it's one other thing I found kind of interesting, because it's like, how do you rationalize this out-of-character decision from Snape in the movie? And what I kind of concluded is that it was actually a psychological subversion tactic where he was very deliberately acting out of character to get under Harry's skin. It's like, wait, Snape's not supposed to encourage me? What the hell's going on? Quidditch match.
Well, in terms of cinematic kind of practices, it was basically there to once again pick up the red herring thing. It was supposed to be basically so that immediately following that, when he suspects Snape, it's just another hammer in the nail for that one.
Right. Remember me? I'm the unpleasant teacher, and I'm evil.
I hope you have a good day. It would be a shame if anything were to happen to you. It's basically one of those moments. And in terms of why the character did it, I don't know. Maybe he was trying to be snide. And it doesn't really fit, as you say, but it's just again that attempt to kind of show the villain on screen again, before the kind of focus is brought on them. But one thing I want to note, again, not really needing to talk about it in great detail, but the staff room. I'd forgotten that the staff room came up in the first book and not the second, because in the second one it's introduced as though for the first time, with the whole gargoyles and such, when he goes to visit the room to get can't remember what the instance was for the first time now, but when he basically goes to the staff room in the second book, that it's presented as like this first time ordeal, and it actually happened in the first one. So there's a little bit of like a writing disconnect there, which I'd forgotten.
Well, I mean, it's more detailed in the next book, and it's
I think the difference is also the fact that this may be Harry's first visit to the staff room, but it's like he's not paying attention to the room. He's paying attention to the bloody mangled leg, and then Snape screeching at him. Okay, I'm out of here.
No, I know. But my point being that he has to open the door to kind of even find out, and the gargoyles aren't there to stop him or anything. So it was she can make mistakes. It's one of the bigger ones, I think, in terms of her continuity. I hadn't picked up on it in previous reads.
I would never have noticed.
It's pretty minor.
Oh yeah, no, of course
it
doesn't matter.
It is
but
the
it's worth
first
noting.
book, so
It's one of those examples.
Who's to say they didn't change staff rooms in the previous year?
That's
like it could be somewhere else now.
That's true. Every year they do that sometimes. Let's just move for the sake of it. We've got enough rooms. Let's try it out, just for fun.
It's also
she does get things wrong. She does get things wrong from time to time, though.
Very rare though. But just worth noting. But so this is where Harry. Sorry, Connor.
The other thing I think we're segueing into the same thing, which is Harry noticing Snape's wounded leg. And the one thing I really thought about it is because Fluffy is so big, this isn't just simple bite and release. Like there's basically no way that Snape wasn't just grabbed by the leg and shaken about by a giant dog.
Or like puny god moment.
Yeah, basically Snape having a puny god moment.
Yeah, I don't think that's exactly what happened, but it's an amusing visual, if nothing else. One thing as well to mention is that this is a good example, Matt, you mentioned in previous chapters how Snape is obviously so different from the films in the books. How this is him at his very one of his most barkiest moments. He's literally saying "Get out, get out!" He shouts a lot in the books.
Yeah, he screams a lot.
Yeah, which he doesn't. You can't marry to the interpretation of the character that Alan Rickman brought, because he's always cold and reserved. But it's
not really a loud person.
It's a less whimsical example of how he's so different.
It's weird because Snape in the books does have a good poker face, but it's with everyone except for Harry, basically. Like he never really shields what he's thinking or feeling from Harry. Probably because he can't, because it's like a touchy subject. But right. From everyone else's perspective, he's like master of legilimency and occlumency, and he's mysterious and whatever. But Harry's just like, I can see right through you, or I think I can. Yep. You're crazy. Yeah.
It's like, oh, Voldemort, you wanted to find out what Snape's thinking? Just be in the room when Harry's there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
But then we get.
There wasn't a scene like that, huh? That he was never in a room with Snape and Voldemort together, was he? Aside from when he watched him kill him. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But that leads us to the morning of the Quidditch game. A nice little Great Hall scene. Obviously, we get a lot of Great Hall scenes throughout the series. It's one of the kind of iconic set pieces, as it were, of the books. But I like this one in particular because it's a nice it's again one of those examples of those relatable moments where you're just nervous for something that's coming up, be it a test, be it a sports game, be, anything. It's the way it's kind of delivered in a nice little technique of the dialogue chain. You not knowing who's speaking until it's described after the fact, with Hermione kind of wheedling him to eat. It's just another good example of her smoothly and naturally writing the lead into something that everyone has experienced at some point.
Yep.
Welcome to Fanalysis, where we wax philosophic about Hermione at breakfast.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice little chain. I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it's like know exactly how that feeling is. It's like the sort of feeling where it's like, you need to eat to make the nausea go away, but that nausea is making it so eating is the last thing you want to do.
Speaking as someone who did sports in high school, she nailed like the feeling of like your first match in anything,
And this is something that Harry's excited about as well.
I felt the same way.
Yeah, he's good at it. He's practiced enough. He's excited about it, but at the same time, he's got that horrible sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, and it just plays very well. But yeah, we get to the actual meat of the chapter and the enjoyable and fun, exciting to talk about stuff, which is the actual game itself. But leading into the kind of pitch and describing the environment fully and everyone's different preparations. The Potter for President banner that the Harry's friends had worked together. One of my favourite parts of this entire chapter is the Wood speech, kind of the introduction of the team, or at least the kind of environment that they're playing in, or preparing in, with Johnson jumping in saying "and women," and then the twins jiving in with each other. This is the big one, the one we've all been waiting for, that kind of thing. I enjoyed that scene because it's just, I don't know, it's the proper introduction of Wood with the team as well, if nothing else.
I would agree with that, and that's actually one reason why the change they made in the movie kind of displeases me, because instead there they have Wood telling the story of his very first Quidditch match ever, where he took a bludger to the head 2 minutes in, woke up in hospital a week later, and I'm just like, that kind of sets a bit of a dour note for the character, whereas this speech would have been a good moment where Wood steps up and tries to be an inspiring figure, and he kind of is, but you also see him taking the piss out of the teammates, and that's what Wood should be to me. It's like he's frickin' captain of the team. Everything he does is always in relation to the team.
Well, like if nothing else, like a team captain is supposed to be someone you can look up to and someone you can believe in, someone you can trust to lead your team to victory. So that is very important for his character. You want to make him seem competent.
But at the same time, taking the piss out of him is part of the course, because this is a team environment, and it's nice.
Not that you can't. I'm not saying that you can't humanize them, but there's a balance,
Yeah. But this is one of those instances of where if it was a TV show or indeed a book, it gets the expanded play out. But with the film, if you had the entire team in a scenario, why would you introduce Johnson? Why would you introduce Bell or Spinette? Because you don't have time. You just go with it with the characters that matter, and the ones have already been introduced in previous scenes, so it makes sense from the film perspective. But anyway, that's just a nice little scene I like playing out. It's the the team dynamic and camaraderie is fun to lead in with the actual game itself. I had forgotten how immediately the genius of Lee Jordan commentating the game kicks in. Like, it's literally 2 seconds in, and he's already annoying McGonagall. It's like my favorite thing about
the quote is taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive too. Jordan!
I loved it. The Rowling is surprisingly brilliant at writing sports play out, given the fact that it's nothing to do with the actual series as a whole in terms of genre. The Quidditch matches are always really interesting to just read through. Very fast paced as well, with the commentating being the thing that leads them. I remember in the audiobook in particular, it plays out really effectively and it feels like you're actually part of the crowd.
Yeah.
Well, this chapter is easy for that because the perspective actually goes to people who are in the crowd. It's a strange chapter in that way, or a unique one, because in the movie and in pretty much every other Quidditch game ever, even in the books, it's all down to Harry's perspective. And yes, other people are in play, but it's all his perspective. This shifts, to seemingly at random, There's Hermione and Ron in the crowd. There's Hagrid. There's Neville. He's there, right?
Yep. He's there crying.
Yeah. Is it
in Hagrid's shoulder?
I just realized something else. One of the details that the movie actually got wrong is that they depicted the Quidditch game taking place in the summer, but when you read the book, it actually very specifically took place in winter. So a completely different visual, just snow and white everywhere. And in a lot of ways, that actually kind of makes a lot more sense to me from a safety perspective, because even the wizards are going to prefer to fall onto snow than dirt.
I'm not sure if it was actually snowing at this point, was it? Or I thought it was just chilled and cold, and the snow comes next chapter. But regardless, it's interesting that the season starts at that point. Yeah, there was a mistake in the, not really a mistake. It was a difference in the films.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, Matt. It's about the perspective. It's whereas we do obviously get certain shifts from away from Harry in other books and other instances. It's always to like one specific perspective. Whereas in the Quidditch game, it literally, as you said, jumps from spot to spot depending on what needs to be covered at any given time. That is unique to the book. Unique to the
it's
series.
unique to the series.
Yeah, series.
Like there are individual chapters, like maybe 4 or 5 of them that are not Harry specific, but in every other chapter, it's Harry's perspective.
Yeah, So I hadn't actually considered that before. This was the only time they ever jump around continuously. It's an interesting one to put it there as well, to have it be that
I
way.
think she just hadn't quite. This book is unique in that way because she's very obviously still figuring out her writing style. Not that it's crude or in need of polish or anything. It's just not quite as cohesive as it becomes later on.
Yeah, it's not as consistent with the way she'll carry on for. But it's obviously the game as it starts. It plays out as interesting as you expected to, given the fact that she's so eloquently incorporating the commentary into the actual pacing of the play out. We get one mention before we move on to the next bit. Did anyone notice that Hagrid pretty much had to teleport to get there? Because he said, I've been watching it from the hut. I mean, it started like a minute ago. Did the second the ball starts into play, did you just sprint at high speed? Because
and how would he even see it from his hut?
Precisely. It's he could see it far off, but it has to be a distance away where he couldn't have reached it in a minute.
Yeah.
I think the other difference is also just the fact that the Hogwarts school grounds are laid out a little bit differently in the movie. In the movie, they basically have the Quidditch pitch being on the opposite side of the school from Hagrid's hut, whereas in the book, I get the impression that they're kind of intended to be relatively close to each other.
Yeah,
maybe just a... Yeah.
I had it just down the hill in my head, like near running sort of parallel along with the forest. But even then,
he still got there pretty quick.
With the way it's never described as looming over the hut when they approach. It cannot be close enough for him to have got there. But yeah, interesting little tidbit. Not interesting, amusing tidbit.
These are things I don't notice.
Yeah,
these are observations I would never think of.
Yeah, but it came up to mind.
Harry's broom.
Yes,
starts to go
awry. The plan. Okay, because Quirrell or
Alan's been saving this, guys.
Quirrell and or Voldemort sat down at some point and thought, yeah, that'll work. This is like a part of the whimsy of the early books coming into play again, because this is just ridiculous. In what universe is waving Harry around off his broom going to kill him with Dumbledore in play, if nothing else? I mean, any of the teachers could stop this from
why
does he
even do it now? Like, why? I mean, there's no point.
It's not only pointless, it's the worst time he could, because Dumbledore could go, what does Jinx stands up, turns around.
No, but I mean, really, like, why is it like just it didn't seem all that calculated to me. Like, if it was, it just seems stupid. Because it just seems like, let's try this, because I can, I guess. Because like, why would he kill him now? Like, it'd be so much easier any other time.
Yeah.
I guess the idea, I suppose, is that this, more than like a Vada Kedavra or something, would maybe look like an accident, maybe, or like it couldn't be traced directly back to Quirrell / Voldemort, but I just don't. It just seems like something needs to happen here to Harry.
Yeah.
I need some drama. Like,
another focus on Snape being the villain. She needs to kind of throw that that ball again. But it's just needs
to,
that's the only reason, because there's no way in hell, even if he'd fallen, which would very easily happen. One teacher raises the wand, problem solved, or players catch him because the twins are circling below to try and catch him if he falls off. It's not going to work, and you're sitting feet away from the one person who is like the biggest threat to you ever. It never fits in my head.
Yeah. The funny thing is that even when you compare Quirrell's actions to those of poor Draco Malfoy in Book 6, where his assassination attempts are blatantly intended to be half-hearted, well, Draco still made a better go at it than Quirrell did.
You're not wrong.
Well, I mean, Voldemort is the one telling him what to do, right? So I mean, it's kind of Voldemort's bad.
Yeah, that was the other thing I want to mention. Do we? Because I've kind of always in my head played it out as that Voldemort was not always permanently, awake and there and functioning on the back of his head. He kind of had to be.
My master's always with me.
Well,
I think he is there. Maybe his
him,
face isn't visible, but he's in him. Like he's in him. He totally has to be in him.
I completely agree, but how active and like constantly present he is. I don't know.
What do you think he was taking a nap or something?
I don't know, because there is a lot that happens where you're thinking
guys. Actually, it's funny you should say taking a nap. I don't think he would have exactly gone to sleep, but you got to consider Voldemort's condition at this point.
That's what I mean.
He's a barely alive, fractured spiritual entity who can only survive by basically leeching the life force from other people. He's probably so drained for energy that there are probably long periods where he's just slumbering and Quirrell's free to go about as he pleases.
Fair enough, but I think that in the moment when Minion is trying to kill Harry Potter, Voldemort is awake for that.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But how much, was he there for the planning stages, or did he wake up going, "What the hell are you doing?"
There is no plan. This can't be. This is not a plan. This is just okay. Let's try this. I guess that can't be a plan. Yeah, you've already explained why it's a ridiculous.
Oh, plan. I completely agree. I'm just saying that's what I'm talking about with the chapter the way it is. It's to me, it's one of the bigger holes in the kind of.
She did this in service of I need to move my plot along, and I need to make Snape look like a bad guy. Like it's you can see the writer's hand in it. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's an example of that standing out because it really rarely does in the series. But yeah, it's probably the biggest one out there. But the game carries on. Scores are made just because Flint is an arse.
Yeah.
And eventually the Harry catches the snitch in a dive and nearly swallows it. Which comes up again in later book, amusingly. But the game ends and they go back to Hagrid's hut and they talk about the suspicions they have for Snape, and Hagrid is kind of outraged by the idea. Like, what are you doing? Why are you researching
How
this?
do you know about Fluffy?
Yeah, it's like it leads into the whole recurring scene where they mention it and he gets annoyed by it because obviously he's not, one, it's none of their business, and two, he doesn't want them to get involved because it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then he name drops.
Nicholas Flamel.
Mm-hmm. Yep, by mistake, and it's like, I should not have said that. I should not have said that.
It's kind of funny because of the fact that Harry's convinced he knows who that was. Any reader could just go, okay, I'll just flip back to like when that name was there. Oh, okay, so he knows Dumbledore. All right, I figured this one out. Like, so I mean, it's like a half-baked mystery because they can literally just check in the same book.
It's the sort of thing where you just... Yeah, it is the sort of thing, though, where if you just keep plowing ahead without thinking about it, and in a way, the way this chapter is structured is it actually kind of encourages you to do that. It's like, instead of thinking, where did Nicholas Flamel come up again? Okay, I'm just going to keep reading and figure it out.
It doesn't make you kind of go back and question it. It was literally that one line that it comes up in, and it shows that quite a lot, and that feeds you it so you can kind of get the vague sense of, oh, maybe Harry has, but I don't know where it is. So it's interesting how it plays out.
Yep.
Worth noting before we wrap up, because that's pretty much the end of the chapter, I'd like to point out how much Hermione is involved in the problem solving of this chapter, because it kind of focuses a bit more on her as a character, given the fact that Ron's had so much time leading up to her beforehand, and also will be absent for she'll be absent for the majority of the next chapter. She's obviously she does Bluebell Flames, so she solves the problem of the cold, the homework, and the cursed broom, because she's coming to play as the knowledgeable one, the one that has all most of the answers to the questions that the others two don't. I like how she's kind of fed in tidbits throughout the chapter for that response. It's nice to have her there and have that time spent on the character that otherwise has been absent.
One other thing I would like to mention about this dialogue scene is one of the random changes from book to film that I actually see as just being a touch negative. In the book, when Hagrid talks about how he got hold of Fluffy, he said, I bought him off a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. Whereas in the movie, he says an Irish chap. And I'm just like, dude, like writer of the movie, that was an obvious Greek mythology reference. Yep. Cerberus. Why the hell did you arbitrarily change that nationality? It serves no purpose. It just gets rid of a clever reference that everyone loves. The fuck?
I mean, I wouldn't say everyone loves, but yeah, I get your point. It's definitely a weird step for no reason. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a bit ranty, but still, you get my point.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically the chapter. We've kind of covered that in as much detail as we possibly could have done. It's a simple one, but it's a lot happens in terms of the plot.
Simple but enjoyable.
Yeah, even to the sense that Harry's being flopped around on that broom for 5 minutes, bear in mind, because Neville specifically noted has been crying for the past 5 minutes. So why the teachers did nothing to stop this is beyond me. But it's one of those, like Matt said, you see the writer's hand at work, and it's a rare example of that for her. So,
It just seems to me that if someone ever wrote a version of this storyline that was told from the perspective of Voldemort and Quirrell, it would probably say something to the effect of one chapter ends with, and Quirrell went to the Quidditch game, and the next one would start with, Quidditch game was over, Voldemort's like, dude, what the hell was that?
They have, someone has written that story.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
No, not probably. It has happened in that musical.
Indeed, a very popular musical again.
Anyway,
but that's
forgot.
That's Quidditch. The fun but less effective chapter, should we say, less eloquently.
Let's not beat around the bush. We didn't have a lot to talk about, but we have to. It's the format.
Yeah,
we have a more substantial chapter next. In line with the Mirror of Erised.
So we'll see you guys there next week for that one. I'm Retty 4, and I still don't have an outro.
Sure, he doesn't. Great in 91. Take care, guys.
You've co-opted my non-outro to make your own outro. It's always something related to mine. Anyway, Evan, sorry.
Evan Nova 95, we hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later, and mischief managed.
All right. Flint nearly kills the Gryffindor Seeker, which could happen to anyone, I'm sure. So a penalty to Gryffindor taken by Spinnet, who puts it away no trouble, and we continue playing Gryffindor still in possession.
That was very long.